Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And today we've seen Venom: The Last Dance.
Yes.
The third in the Venom trilogy. Maybe there'll be more, but there is an implied ending. I say implied, things are always left open, you never know.
Yes.
But this is closing the story, it appears. We liked the first one very much. That was our 100th podcast, I think, back in 2018. It was surprisingly funny. Tom Hardy gave this great physical performance full of life. The second one we hated. I don't remember very much of it. All I remember really is the giant cathedral sort of set piece at the end that finishes it off. It was chaos. And we remarked that getting Andy Serkis to direct didn't seem like a great idea. He's an actor, you know, and he just wasn't good as a director. The director of this one is Kelly Marcel, who has written the other two. This is her directorial debut, but she's written plenty of things. You hated it.
I did.
I mostly didn't think it was very good, but there were things I liked.
I mean, you know, hate is like a strong word.
Sure.
I just was almost like completely bored throughout and just kind of waiting it for end to end. And actually, I was a bit annoyed with Tom Hardy because to me, this is not a performance. You know, it's like he's being cutesy in a way that he never had before. That whole shtick with the one barefoot thing at the beginning was outrageous. I thought the film looked like shit. You know, like it almost like there had been no care to lighting. The image is thin and terrible. And I think the performances, you know, by actors I really, really like, yeah, kind of are all blanks. And, you know, I thought it was unimaginative. It had a few interesting images, yeah, but static. As soon as the thing began to move, it was like terrible. And I think it's a waste of a whole bunch of talent.
That's all for this week. Thank you very much for listening. I mean, I mostly agree. There's a huge amount of mess, and early on, I remarked to you at one point that this is just full of characters telling each other things they already know. It's the worst kind of writing where it's, you know, Russell T Davies, who, you know, is a very well known obviously TV writer in the UK. He once said that he saw a show where the opening line of dialogue was "Happy Wedding Day, sis." You know, and it's like no one talks like that. This is just full of information to get to an audience, and so much of that is like this. You've got this Area 55, which because Area 51 is being kind of shut down and whatever, but Area 55 is even more secret and underground. And you've got the characters played by Juno Temple and Chiwetel Ejiofor just constantly explaining to each other what happens in Area 55 and how it's so secret. It's like they know all this shit. You meet the family who are UFO hunters and they're explaining stuff to each other. You know, right at the start you got, that's why we gave up all our savings and went on this trip. And like, it's not, I was going to say it's functional. It's not even functional. Like, it does the function of giving you all this information. But it's so brings attention to itself and all this. And I found Tom Hardy's performance early on very annoying. I mean, his dual performances, because obviously he's performing the voice of Venom as well as Eddie Brock. And, you know, I found it hard to understand some of what he was actually saying as Venom. I don't think some of it's very clear. But I found the interplay between him and Venom, which I had previously really enjoyed in the other films, a bit hard to stomach. Although I do think it improved.
I thought the timing was off. It was weird. It was almost like, you know, there was no timing between the call and response. In a way that previously, part of the fun in it was that. Yeah, there was a rhythm to it, yeah, and a timing. And aside from the width of the lines, yeah.
That was a lack here, certainly. There were 3 or 4 points where I laughed.
Yes.
And the film got me, you know, and it meant for me to laugh. But mostly I wasn't going with it. I actually think you might be right with, like, this. At one point I sort of thought, God, this is a little bit Ryan Reynolds. You know, like the self-awareness of the shtick sort of thing. But that is a very harsh brush to paint Tom Hardy with.
I don't think so. I think this is the worst performance I've seen him give. And I think, you know, part of the reason is, well, you know, he practically has no character now. And it's all about being cutesy, really, and kind of coming up with shtick, right? So I found him, and I love him, but, you know, he was very annoying in this, very uncharismatic, very unappealing, and kind of shticky, really.
Yeah, there are bits and pieces that I still enjoyed, like when he's walking into the casino. Well, I mean, this is just one example, but it's something he does quite a lot, which is that his body will move before kind of he does, because the idea is Venom has got his own desires inside him and will go off looking for, and he's very good at that. He's very good at playing someone who someone else is in control of his body. He's still good at that, but that's not enough, right?
I really hated it. I thought, like, what is the point of this film? Because you have such brilliant talent. I mean, Rhys Ifans, Juno Temple, El Jawar, Chiwetel, yeah. I mean, these are great actors, and like, why the fuck do they take this on? I mean, is it pure paycheck time? Because what is this film about? What purpose does it serve? What is it trying to convey? I mean, even as a thrill ride or as a piece of entertainment, it's just so banal and derivative and leaden and heavy-handed and just annoying with it all, really.
I wish it had been a little bit more cartoony. I mean, it's going for lightheartedness. It's definitely a comedy action film.
But all the laughs fall flat.
Yeah, but I wish, and there is, I did not hate a lot of the action, right? It's not great, but I do like that the action contains ideas and it tries to work through ideas. So,
Well, like what?
So for what I'm thinking of right now is when you see in Area 55, I think it is, all these Venoms, all these symbiotes that they've got in containment, and you just know that these are going to be unleashed at some point, and you're going to get a whole army of Venoms of different colours and different kind of varieties and skill sets and whatnot. And when that eventually happens, I quite enjoy that. Like, I enjoyed the kind of, there's like a Power Rangers sort of, let's get them all out, and like getting your toy set out sort of thing. And it kind of, it does that and it works through it. It doesn't stick around for very long, and they end up mostly dying. The thing right at the end, the way that Venom sacrifices himself to save, spoilers, to save everyone, with the acid bath that has been previously set up, and he absorbs the monsters in order to do that, is an idea, and you see it coming and you see it work through, and it works. Although there was just a functional element to that which I was missing, which was, how do they know about this acid bath? I mean, I know it's got acid written on the side, but they don't know how it works. Like, the only time we've seen it is when Juno Temple was watching it being used earlier. They haven't seen it, so but whatever, just go with it, I suppose. So there are bits and pieces, and I liked, and you'll think this is just like stupid and corny and just like me, but I like the family. When he met the UFO chasing family, and it's the mum and dad who are really into it, and the kids aren't so much. All I wanted when they're giving him a lift, all I wanted was for the dad to see Venom. I was like, come on, man, just let him. Like, he wants it so much. That's all he wants for his life. And of course he doesn't at that point, but we know he will later on. And then when eventually they do, they are confronted with Venom, it's been given context by the young son earlier having said, I'm actually really scared of aliens, I don't want to see one. And then there's quite a sweet thing where he comes out and says, he introduces himself and thanks for the chocolate that he gave him earlier and so on. Which, that works for me. I mean, I'm not saying like I fell apart in tears at it, I just found it quite sweet and nice. There are moments like that. And the whole finale when Venom is finally gone, at least for now, and Eddie is on his own, and it's playing this montage. I think it's designed to be funny as well as sweet, that, because it really reminds me of, like, I suppose you get them on TikTok now, but when I was sort of a kid, it would have been on YouTube. People would put together their own fan montages of like relationships they like and thing, and they set them to like a piece of music that they're like, that's exactly what's going on here. Like, I think it's meant to look and feel just like those, and that I think is a joke, as well as, oh yeah, they did have this relationship and he's lost his mate and so on and so forth. There's bits and pieces.
I thought that whole thing was a cliche, the hippie-ish kind of family. Yeah, I mean,
of course, yes,
I didn't mind the schmaltziness in it, because you welcome almost anything in, something as boring as this. But, it was just so derivative, really. You've seen that kind of family.
Certainly, yeah.
And actually, to me, the idea of Rhys Ifans playing that role, you think, my God, what is the world coming to, and what the fuck is happening with his career to take on this role?
I mean, actually, what the role it reminded me of was kind of Spike from Notting Hill, which didn't seem to be a million miles kind of,
There was a little bit of that, it's true.
Sort of scruffy comedy sidekicky character. Of course, he's played much more rewarding roles than that as well. But I thought, no, I've seen him do this before, and he is decent at it.
Well, I mean, that's true. He wasn't bad, but it's not memorable in the ways that the character in Notting Hill was, right?
No, certainly not.
So I just thought, and you had warned me, like, why do you want to see this film?
Well, yeah.
And I thought, because I'm a completist, right? Like, I would just like to see it.
And you like comics.
And I love comic book movies and so on. But really, this has to be, to me, amongst the very worst. I could not understand why the film looked so ugly, right? Like, just it seemed like a film that I would have photographed. Yeah, someone with no sense of, where to put lights or how to illuminate faces. I was watching this Jessica Lange interview about her career. And she was talking about kind of Neil Nyqvist, I think, or all those wonderful cinematographers that she'd worked with, and she was saying, well, and they were like communicating with light, they were expressing emotion with light, right? Kind of, you were just a part of it, like so much of it had already kind of been communicated just by the way that they lit the set, right? And you think that idea has never crossed these people's minds, right? Like, it looked like shit.
At the risk of sounding like the kind of grumpy old man type, it really does seem like film lighting, at least in the very biggest films where you think you're spending money on everything to make it as good as possible. It feels like film lighting is really, I was going to say an art that's being lost. I'd say undervalued, right? I mean, they don't seem to really think that it's worth it, and maybe it's partially a consequence of films like this being so heavy on post-production visual effects and doing everything in green screen.
They probably think they can do it all in post, and they can't.
But it does mean that, like, when you're adding in the whole background and an extra character in post, it seems like the only function of the lighting on the day of shooting is to make sure that the green screen is nice and even, so you can key it out later. But actually, the lighting on the face should still be a consideration, all that sort of stuff. And you only have to look at films from 30 years ago, before VFX was just the dominant, the thing that everything was sort of relied on, to see what an ordinary mid to high budget action movie, which is essentially what this would have been, would look like. And they're miles apart. You think of something like Speed or The Rock. Like, that's the kind of level we're talking at, right? They're completely different.
Yeah.
And I find it really dispiriting.
This is really kind of, I mean, I think it's the worst film I've seen, like, in the last year, really. Like, it's memorably, like, not bad in the sense that it wasn't painful. It was just, all this talent, and all they could present is this dull film in every dimension. It was dull in terms of lighting, it was very poorly plotted. The comic thing didn't quite work, kind of the actors, like, they were obviously misdirected somehow. Like, the film didn't look good. Like,
we need not press this too much. There's one more thing that I think is worth mentioning, which I wondered whether you might mention, which is the preponderance of British talent in here, which I'm pretty sure we talked about in the last one.
Yes.
Being directed by Andy Serkis, who's English, and the main villain being Stephen Graham, who's English, and he reappears here, although it's a minor role here. But the director is English. Obviously, Tom Hardy at the centre of it is English. Chiwetel Ejiofor, Juno Temple, Rhys Ifan, Stephen Graham, and Andy Serkis, I think, is also knocking about. All British.
I know.
And it's, and you do kind of feel it. It is one of these films where you do kind of feel I'm watching British people in accents talking to each other all the time, and there is some, and just like on top of all that VFX fakeness, there's nothing. There's like this complete lack of authenticity to anything, any observation, any kind of feeling of authenticity about the culture it's presenting, that sort of thing.
Yes. Or the people its main intended audience, which I'm assuming is really kind of an American one. It's a problem.
Certainly is an American one. The last shot of the film is the Statue of Liberty, which they talked about. We'll go and see the Statue of Liberty together, and then he sees it on his own, and I remember you and stuff. And it's like that image really, really only means things to Americans. Like we will recognise the Statue of Liberty, but it's like when Saving Private Ryan ends with fading into the American flag. It's like that war was about more than you. You know. Anyway.
So I do not recommend anyone to see this.
No, you have to have seen every other film in the world and then get to it.
So thank you all very much for listening. We are Eavesdropping at the Movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and YouTube Podcasts, YouTube Music. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter, such as it is, at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, where everyone's going, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.